Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the defining moment that shape extraordinary people into who they have become. Today's guest is Xanet Pailet, a national recognized sex and intimacy coach, bestseller author of Living an Orgasmic Life, founder of Passionate Intimacy Retreats, and a woman who spent 26 years in sexless marriage before leaving it all at 50 to rebuild herself and her understanding of love from the ground up, to walk away from a high power legal career and everything she thought she knew about intimacy and turn that reckoning into a life work, helping couples find their way back to each other. Zenet, it's really a pleasure and honor having you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinay. I'm super happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you, Zenet. So, Zenet, before the marriage, before the law career, and before any of life you eventually had to dismantle, who were you growing up and what did you understand about love, intimacy, and connection from the world you were raising?
Who was I growing up? That's an interesting question. I think what I understood who I was, I don't know, somebody who was raised by a single mother because my father passed away when I was almost 3 years old, which was devastating for her. I didn't really know him, but it was also devastating for me. And I think, sadly, what I learned about love from my mother was that love was about feeling pain and loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I learned about love, which was not a very healthy thing
Yeah.
to learn, right? That's not the kind of,
Yeah.
lesson that you want to teach your children. But
Yeah.
that's what I was
That was
taught.
really a whole lot of things. I'm like, whoosh, that must have really been tough, and you can't blame her entirely being that she having to lost her husband while you were three. It a whole lot. Maybe she doesn't just know how to carry it all on, and that
Yeah,
forged your perception of love being different, and that was really more
yeah.
like a whole lot. So you became a healthcare attorney, high achieving, analytical, and by your own description, deeply disconnected from your own body. What
Yes,
was the
true.
version of you like in habits, and what were you telling yourself about life that you were building?
Well, the version of me was very like type A personality, going to achieve, make my mark on the world, make a lot of money, live in a great
Yeah,
house, have a great husband, raise kids. That was the version
yeah,
of me, that I was working with. And how that showed up for me was I was intense. I was very focused, still am, but, very focused, very like a lot of masculine energy and very goal oriented and also very disconnected from my body.
mm, that was really a whole lot, and I'm just wondering what it would have been like being goal oriented and still disconnected from your own body. That was really
Well, yeah. Well, the goal orientation had nothing to do around sex. The goal
yeah,
orientation was around like my business,
yeah,
making money, like all of the things, the trappings of life that you think when you're in your 20s and 30s are really important. And it's
yeah,
not until you hit your 40s that you realize like that maybe isn't as important. There's
yeah,
other things in life that are more important.
yeah,
But I was socialized that way. I was brought up that way to think that's what I was supposed to
yeah,
do.
yeah, a whole lot. So you were in a sexless marriage for 26 years now. From the outside, the life looks successful, children, career, doing everything right. What
Yeah.
was actually happening the inside, and when did you first start to understand that something was profoundly wrong?
Oh, I knew from the beginning that something was profoundly wrong. And it wasn't, just that we had a lot of challenges around our sex life. It was just that I had a lot of challenges around sex. And I knew that going into the marriage. And he knew that going into the marriage. So it's not like it wasn't like talked about or disclosed, just based on some of my history. It was just I think it was just, I think I thought it would all go away once I was married and settled and relaxed. And that's just not the way trauma works. Trauma doesn't usually just go away. trauma lives in your body and events will happen that will trigger that trauma. And I think that was, part of what was happening for me. That was my experience of like, oh, I thought this was all gone and it wasn't. But I also didn't know that it was trauma. I didn't have words for it. I hadn't been really focused on it. It was just like, this doesn't work. This doesn't feel good. I'm not having pleasure. I'm going to stop doing this. And, the experience of living in a sexless marriage for any of you who have is very lonely. And it doesn't necessarily start off that way, but over at least for us, a relatively short period of time, we got more and more disconnected from each other, physically, emotionally, in every way except for like parents, if you will, a family unit. And we ended up sleeping in the same room, separate rooms eventually. And that's not an uncommon experience that people have who are in sexless marriages because I work with so many of them.
Yeah, a whole lot. So you described the intimacy not disappearing dramatically, but fading slowly. No fighting,
Yes.
no drama, just
Yes.
disconnect. How does a person live inside a kind of quiet erosion for so long without confronting it? And what kept you from naming it?
Yeah. Know that it wasn't confronted a couple of times. It probably was confronted a few times, but it created more drama and more conflict. And so it was easier just to not confront it. I think that question is something you have to ask my ex-husband,
Yeah,
really, to be honest with you. Because for me, it was like a relief. It was like, oh, thank God we don't have to do this anymore. Like, I didn't want to. It didn't feel good. There was no pleasure. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of other things happening. And I was just like, it was a relief for me. And so I think for anybody in that sort of scenario where sex is really challenging, it's difficult, it's painful, or you're really disconnected with your body, you're dissociated, whatever, like stopping actually is a relief, right? It's the other partner that's really the one who's injured. And I don't know how he dealt with it, to be honest with you. We didn't have enough communication around that to be able to have that conversation.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you left that marriage at 50. What did making
Hmm.
that decision feel like, and what did it require you to dismantle in yourself
Mm.
beyond the relationship?
Yeah, it felt amazing and scary. It felt freeing to be able to be out of a relationship that wasn't working, that was really becoming very toxic. So there was like a sense of freedom around it. There was also a sense of terror
Yeah,
about I'd never lived alone by myself. And by that time, both our children were in college. And so I had my own apartment on my very own, which I'd never done. And that was terrifying for me, like just the thought of being by myself. Well, like I said, the process was initially very terrifying, but eventually, after a relatively short period of time, I started creating, I already kind of had my own life. This is kind of what happens when
yeah,
you're in a sexless marriage, right? You have your own life, but, I was able to solidify more of my own life, and it was very enlightening. Like I had opportunities to really explore at that age, at 50 years of old age, like what did I really want out of life? What was my passion? What was driving me? What's next for me, right? So it was really a great opportunity to take a deep dive into my own, like, who am I now? Who am I now that I'm no longer a wife? I'm still a mother, but my kids are grown. So it was a reckoning, if you will, of what did I want and how did I want the next, 30 years, 40 years, who knows, of my life to look like.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing. So you went from healthcare law to becoming a sex and intimacy coach. But that is not
I
a small
did.
pivot. It's a complete reinvention of identity and vocation. What cracked that direction open for you, and what made you willing
Yeah.
to go outside something the professional world you have came to never predicted?
Well, I think I look at myself as a wounded healer. So as I left the marriage and I started all of this questioning about who am I and what do I want and do I ever want to have sex again? Why don't I enjoy sex? Like, what's all my stuff? What are all my issues that I never ever really looked at that level? I started doing my own work, right? And looking at my traumas and looking at my disconnection with my body and why that happened. And, all of these like pieces from my childhood that really impacted my sexuality. And it was through that process of my own healing that I both saw how powerful it was when you actually heal and you awaken your sexuality and you can connect to your body, and how that started just like significantly shifting my life. And also, like, I was super interested in it. I was like, this is fascinating stuff, much more interesting than
Yeah.
being a lawyer, right? Maybe I could make money doing this. Maybe this is something I would actually be good at. I have a lot of empathy. I've had a lot of lived experience of
Yeah.
what it's like to be in a sexless marriage, to be in a relationship that's disconnected. From all of that pain, I will be able to actually help people. And that was really my decision point.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Really a whole lot of time. The fact that while you're powerlifting, it make your heart ask some hard questions you have to give answers to for diving further into it. So you have said that the desire does not die because of age, hormone, or time. It disappears when the emotional safety erodes and the body stops feeling invited into the relationship. When did you first understand that, and how personal was that realization?
It was very personal for me. Well, I guess I would say there were two parts to my healing, Benet. One part was the sexual awakening part, like, oh, I'm not broken anymore, because I did feel broken. Anybody who has issues around their sexuality, they feel broken, right? So that was one part of the healing. Oh, I'm not broken anymore. I can have sex. I can enjoy it. I can have pleasure. Great. The second part of the journey, which was probably at some level the longer part of the journey and a little bit more definitely emotionally challenging, was like, what does intimacy really look like? Right? And what does it look like to feel safe in a relationship? What does it look like to feel seen, to feel understood, to feel respected, to feel like somebody really cares for you and wants to take care of you, and it's not all about them. And that was a longer process of really, through a variety of different men who came into my life and a bunch of different relationships that I had. Each time I learned something else about me, and I learned something else about intimacy and something else about connection, about what my fears were of really letting myself go and opening up and healing that very wounded part of me that was very afraid, very like both anxiously attached and also very avoidant
Yeah.
at the same time, right? I had both things going on, like very disconnected in that way. And so that was a longer part of the journey personally, but also when I started working with couples, and it's the basis of, I'm going to do a little show and tell here. It's the basis of my new book, The
Yeah.
Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, right? When I started working with couples very extensively, I also began to notice that, like, if I just work with them on sex, because they're, having challenges, it didn't fix it, right? But when I work with them on the emotional connection, on reconnecting, on, why aren't we feeling emotionally safe with each other? Why is this so hard for us to talk about? Right? Why is there so much resentment? Why am I so angry at you? That's all of the emotions that underlie a broken sexual relationship, right? And it just became very clear to me, like, as I focused on that and I help couples really find that connection, then everything started opening up and flowing, just like it did in my own life as well, right? Like, have great partners in my life, but until I really found myself in a relationship where I could totally, do the work with my partner
Yeah.
to open ourselves up, to be able to be really vulnerable with each other, that's when the really, really deep, passionate intimacy happened. So they were kind of happening like they often do at the same time, right? You teach what you have to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you teach what you have to learn. Wow,
Teach what you have to learn.
that was really a whole lot. And now you have actually more like led over 100 couples intimacy retreat and achieve a 90%
It's
success rate in happy couples repair connection. Or what do you see in couple who walk through the door that remind you most of where you once were?
Great question. I think the couples that I see that remind me most of who I once was were couples who, at some level, like really care for each other, because I did care for my husband. We did care for each other. There was love there, at least for a while. And are just really frustrated that they can't communicate with each other, that they can't be honest with each other, that they can't authentically express how they feel about each other, that they're afraid if they say something that's true for them, that they're going to really hurt their partner, and they don't know what the consequences are going to be around that. And, and the reality is that if you're in a romantic relationship, you are going to hurt your partner. That's natural. That's normal. But learning how to get out of that conflict, learning how to repair it in a way in which you create more connection and more intimacy really will make the difference between whether this relationship will work or it won't work. And those are the couples that I see that come through the door. They really want to make the relationship work. They really love each other. They're super confused about why things have gone sideways, and they don't know how to repair it.
Looking back now at the 26 years you have spent in that marriage, what are you most grateful for? That experience, as painful as it was, because of the coach, the author, and the woman it has eventually made you.
I think I'm just grateful for everything. Like, like I said, I'm a wounded healer. If I hadn't had the experience of being wounded, if I hadn't had the experience of feeling broken, if I hadn't had the experience of not feeling connected to my body, not understanding what intimacy was like, then I wouldn't be able to like bring this message out into the world, right? And leave a legacy behind me. As painful as it was at times, there was plenty of joy as well. It was worth it. Would it have been better possibly for me to leave a little bit earlier? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think in retrospect, I would say my kids would have gotten over it. They would have been okay. But, if it hadn't happened, I'd still be a lawyer doing
Yeah.
like boring stuff, right? I wouldn't have given it up.
Yeah, amazing. You lead a luxurious trauma-informed intimacy retreat in Costa Rica and the US. What actually happened at one of those retreats, and what shift for couple in that immersive environment that months of regular section sometimes cannot?
Yeah. So sort of my philosophy around intimacy is that you can't talk your way into better sex and intimacy. You have to feel your way into it. Therefore, all of my retreats, both international in Costa Rica, as well as my private retreats in the US and coaching that I do, is very interactive and experiential. So we're not just talking about what the problems are in the relationship, because most couples who've come to me, they've done that. They've seen therapists. Some of them have even seen sex therapists, and they may have made a little bit of progress, but they're still not where they want to be, right? So we take them into like a process of actually experiencing, what does it feel like when I can open myself up? What does it feel like when we hurt each other? What does it feel like when we're vulnerable? What kind of touch do we both want? We usually don't have language. What new language can we learn about that, right? So that you can embody the experience itself, which is very, very powerful. And it's the only thing that actually changes the dynamic.
Your work with emptiness, questioning what is next, and with women reclaiming your pleasure, agency, and power later in life, what do you most want those women to know about what is still available for them, and what do they most need permission to believe?
Well, number one, I want everybody to know what I just said, right? You can't talk your way into
Yeah.
better sex and intimacy. If you have challenges, you have to feel your way into it. The second thing I want everyone to know is that these are all skills that you can learn. Like sex is definitely a skill that you can learn. All sorts of different, experiences around sex, different ways to touch your partner, types of energies that you want to feel in your body. But also intimacy is our skills that you can learn. That's why I wrote the book. It was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to, do retreats with everybody who needs this work, but I can write a book and give people very specific tools and skills and practices and exercises that they can use to start building this muscle, which so many people never had and have never exercised it before. So I guess what I want you to know is like, it's never hopeless. It all can be fixed, generally speaking. Sometimes it can't, but most of the time it can be fixed. And it's a very, sex and intimacy is very skill-based.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, you can't talk your way through it. You have to feel your way to it. Yeah, amazing.
Feel your way into it.
So lastly, what legacy do you hope your book, your retreats, and your work leave, especially for couples who have been quietly coexisting for years and have almost stopped believing that real intimacy is still possible for them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope the legacy that I leave is a lot of couples learning that they're not broken, that their relationship isn't broken, and that there is help out there, and there are lots of things that they can learn to help feel more connected to each other. That and that just putting their head in the sand and not doing anything is just going to make things worse. It's never going to get better on its own. They actually have to take some sort of affirmative action in order to be able to make a change. But there's also so much beauty during that growth period with your partner, right? Like that's one of the most beautiful ways to grow with your partner and to heal some of the issues in the context of a beautiful long-term relationship.
So, for my audience who would love to reach out, either for the book, the retreat, the coaching sections, and or just to connect with you on various media, how can they reach out to you and where is the best platform?
So my website is Passionate Intimacy Retreats with an S.com, passionateintimacyretreats.com, where you'll find all my programs, my book, everything that I offer, as well, lots of free, great information and resources. And then you can find me on Instagram at Xanet, XanetPop. And I'm sure this will all be in the show notes, as well as, I'm on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook as well.
Yeah, this has really been amazing. I thank you so much for such an open, honest, and genuine, courageous conversation. Your journey just remind us that desire does not disappear. It waits, and then sometimes it takes the bravery of walking away from everything that look right to finally discover what actually feel like. Yes, from 26 of quiet disconnection to helping hundreds of couples find their way back to each other. Your story is a proof that it's never too late to live an orgasmic life. Yeah, it has really been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Benet.